Hey everyone, welcome back. We're here for part two, and today we have the lovely
Kiah Duggins. I'm a
graduate.
3L at Harvard Law School.
Now, let's get into some more questions. So, as far as the Harvard community, what are the top things you would change about Harvard?
Ooh, okay. So that's a great question. When I was applying to law school, I imagined that law school was kind of a Hogwarts for justice, where everybody comes and we learn how to fight for justice together. And that's especially at Harvard, that's kind of the image that I had in my head. And that is not what I found when I got there. I found that at Harvard Law School, at least, it's mostly an institution that seeks to preserve and hoard power, to put it in one sentence, and not to fight for justice. And so that's the kind of foundation where my answers are going to come from. The things that I would change all revolve around shifting that power and redistributing that power. And so I would like to see people who are marginalized, people who are directly affected by the law. I would like to see them creating the curriculums. I would like to see them teaching the classes, because not only does that elevate marginalized voices, but it helps the students who will go on to have powerful positions know how the law actually impacts people, increase their empathy, hopefully lead them to make more equitable decisions in what powerful positions they end up in. I would also um, I would also change the curriculum to include, like, the main 1L curriculum to include critical theory, like critical legal studies, critical race theory, et cetera. Because I think that being able to critique the law is just as important as knowing what the law is, so that, you can think critically, change things that need to change, keep things moving. And the last thing that I would change is I'm a big fan of clinics, which is when you work under the supervision of an attorney and work with clients while you're in law school. So it's kind of like an apprenticeship. And I would require everybody to take way more clinical hours, because I think taking clinics really teaches you not only the skills of being a lawyer, but also the empathy that you need, the people skills that you need to negotiate, to counsel clients, etc. So yeah, that's what I would change.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll probably also change the summer contribution, which we are working towards changing, which, yeah, the financial aid policies are also a little.
Oh yeah, the financial aid policy is not great. I would also change that. I think it should be free. I think law school should be totally free, especially for students who are descendants of slaves. I think it should be totally free, because Harvard was founded with wealth that was created by Black slaves. So yes, everything should be free.
And to me, I'm just like, we are in a classroom with books that are like already written. Like, how is it so expensive? Like,
How's it so
a
expensive?
medical school has
Harvard's expensive.
labs and everything. Like, and we just have textbooks which they like oftentimes wrote. So it's like,
Right. What are we paying for? Also, like, they own all the land in Cambridge outright. So what are we paying for? The professors are endowed. So our tuition isn't going to that. So what are we paying for? I don't know. They should change that.
and then they pay the tuition, and then we have to pay housing. I'm like, yeah.
Why?
Speaking about money, would you say that Harvard was worth the money?
Okay, so that's a complicated question. I would say, um, so first off, I'll say, based on what we were just talking about, Harvard is way too expensive, and it doesn't need to be that expensive, like we just talked about, because Harvard has a lot of money. It has more money than like a lot of countries in the world. So they can afford to let students go for free or to drastically reduce the tuition. So Harvard, and I think that keeping it that expensive is a way to gatekeep, is a way to preserve and hoard power, is a way to make sure that only certain kinds of people in certain income brackets get the privileges and power that Harvard offers. So I'll start by saying that it's way too expensive. I think it should be free. I'm gonna say that for the rest of my life. But I will also say, I think the implication behind the question worth the money is, was it worth it to go to Harvard? And I will say that it is worth it to go to Harvard um, if you're interested in using the power and privilege that Harvard gives you to redistribute somewhere else, then it is worth it to go to Harvard, because everybody knows the Harvard name, everybody knows the Harvard brand. And so if you have ideas that are maybe not the most popular, then it's helpful to have the Harvard brand behind you so that people listen. But it's way too expensive. It shouldn't be that expensive. I think it should be much more accessible than it is right now.
Awesome. And how would you describe your experience at HLS?
I would describe my experience at HLS as I'm trying to think of like one word. I would describe my experience at HLS as, this is going to sound like a cop-out word a little bit, but I would say interesting, in both good and bad ways. And so I'll start with the bad. I came to Harvard with very high expectations, wanting to learn how to fight for justice, wanting to learn how to redistribute power and privilege. And that is not what Harvard teaches. However, you can learn that from the other beautiful, wonderful, incredible people, students who come to Harvard, like yourself, who've had a variety of life experiences, and who are also interested in fighting for justice and who have already fought for justice in their lives. And so even though Harvard isn't exactly teaching you that, because you're in a room with so many other people who have so many different experiences, it's incredible to be able to learn from everybody else, and learn from their life experiences. So it kind of makes Harvard a little bit of like a shell company that they just like put us all into, and we learn from each other. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that's how it turned out for me. So I will say it was interesting in that, in a good sense, and that I really, like, it really expanded my worldview, all the students and their life experiences. And then also working in clinics, which is once again, when you're working under the supervision of an attorney to work with clients and go to court, that really expanded my worldview and expanded my skill set as well, and taught me like all of the both soft and hard skills that you need to be a lawyer. And I think that was probably the most meaningful part of my law school experience. And so, yeah, I would say it's really interesting. It's interesting to see how, now that I'm getting ready to graduate, my expectations of Harvard did not match the reality of what Harvard is, initially, but I was able to kind of build a world that matched my expectations, just with the incredible people and the incredible other students and the incredible clinical instructors that exist at HLS.
Awesome. And what made you attend Ivy League?
So I attended public schools my entire life, from pre-K through college. And I'm from Wichita, Kansas. So I attended Wichita public schools, and then I went to Wichita State University. So not only was I attending public schools, they were like all in this, like all within like a 2-mile radius of each other. Like every school that I attended is like all in one place. And I'm a huge public school fan. A big part of me doesn't think private schools should even exist, but that's another conversation for another day. Here I am graduating from a private school. So, um, but I decided to go to an Ivy League, because I, uh, I'm interested in redistributing power and privilege, and Ivy Leagues hoard a lot of power and privilege. And so I was like, let me go in here and see what I can take. Let me go in here and see what I can take and sprinkle about the world. So that's why I chose Harvard. And Harvard's a good place to come and get, take things, take resources, get all you can, sprinkle it about the world, kind of like Robin Hood style. And so, yeah, that's why I chose it.
Awesome. And how do you feel Harvard has affected your opportunities?
I think Harvard's had an excellent impact on my opportunities. Harvard is a really strong brand, um, for better or for worse. Everybody knows about Harvard. And so I think a tangible example of how it's impacted my opportunities is I've only done public interest work, which means I've been working for nonprofits, working in the civil rights field, et cetera. And I've very rarely been asked to show my grades. Very rarely, if at all. I'm trying to think if anybody's asked. And part of that, I think, is because I go to Harvard. And so it's kind of like, they're like, oh, okay, you go to this elite school, so we don't really need to know like what your grades are. Also, our grades don't really make sense. Oh, yes, an employer did ask for my grades one time, but then they didn't know what they meant because they're like P and H and they're like, we don't know what this means, so never mind. So I think that's like a tangible way that it's affected my opportunities. It's also, once again, there's so many incredible people who come to Harvard. And so there's like lots of opportunities to network, lots of opportunities to learn about other opportunities from your peers and your friends. And so I think because Harvard attracts people who've had like a diverse array of life experiences, it's affected my um, it's affected my opportunities by just basically exposing me to more opportunities. An example of that is so I did my Fulbright in Taiwan before I came to law school, and Harvard Law School, because it's so big, has lots of different programs that you can study, and they have an East Asian legal studies program. So I was able to continue studying Taiwan, writing about Taiwan, doing comparative international law at Harvard. And that wouldn't be possible at some other schools that are just smaller and don't have as many programs. So lots of opportunities to gain for your career if you go to Harvard.
Perfect. All right. Well, stick around for part 3 of this interview and we'll be right back.